I remember one time in Puerto Rico say, you know what, Commonwealth is what you want. How you want the Commonwealth? That's it. You want it with citizenship? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Down here. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't going to take it away. My name is Xavier Romeo, and I was Secretary of Commerce of Puerto Rico and Executive Director of the Federal Administration. My name is Xavier Romeo. I was Secretary of Commerce for Puerto Rico and also Executive Director of the Economic Development Agency and the Federal Affairs Office in Washington, D.C. at a given point in time. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, but I'm a New Yorker through and through. I'm not just a participant here. I have been a plaintiff litigator. I'm the Romeo in Romeo versus Cohen. I decided to sue the President and the Department of Justice because I had voted in New York. I'm a registered voter, and I believe that that's the foundation of our American democracy. When I moved down to Puerto Rico to serve the island, I lost that right. I couldn't get an absentee ballot, although I could have moved to a foreign country and obtained that absentee ballot. That is a result, as the professor from Columbia, my alma mater, has noted in many of her writings of the insular cases. Now, I think that we're not being bottom line, and I'd like to bring a little bit of New York into the whole discussion. It's actually, and I don't mean to disagree with the kind professor from the other law school in New York, but I think that it's actually fairly simple and fairly straightforward. It's called Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. Congress shall make all needful rules and regulations to dispose of territories. Perhaps because the Founding Fathers never thought that we'd be talking about this issue 112 years after the fact. And perhaps because the decision in Bidwell versus U.S., the first of the 5 or 6 insular cases, never anticipated, and in fact stated, that the issue of Puerto Rico remaining a territory, in that case eventually an incorporated territory, would not be an issue that would take forever. Yet here we are. I think the solution is actually quite simple, and I disagree with the professor from NYU. I think he has noted as authority some of the insular cases. Well, the insular cases happen to be an outgrowth of Plessy versus Ferguson. In fact, the dissenting minority in Plessy was one vote. Justice Harlan, who was part of the dissenting minority in Bidwell versus U.S., 5-4. But I don't mean to be technical. What I mean to say is that citation of the insular cases for the proposition that there can be a binding contract between the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico and the United States seems rather suspect, because the Plessy versus Ferguson and the insular cases, which are the legacy of Plessy versus Ferguson, were overturned in Brown versus Board of Education with regards to individuals, but are still visited on Puerto Rican Americans over 100 years after they were decided. So if they were not applicable and they should have been overturned and were overturned in Brown versus Board, they should not still be applicable. But really, let's cut to the chase, because I think that both professors have put their finger on the issue. The issue here is this task force, is our president and this Congress going to clarify what the constitutional viable alternatives are? And I submit to this task force that all it needs to do is to go back historically at every one of the hundreds of hearings, task forces, evaluations of Puerto Rico, and see how many times those in the Commonwealth Party who agree with the current territorial Commonwealth have found it in their hearts to say that they do not agree with Congress, that they do not agree with a specific bill, that they don't agree with a specific definition. And ask yourselves, why? Why is it always no? The reason is simple. Because in saying no, status quo and the 112 years of colonialism in Puerto Rico continue to be in effect. Now, I am from New York, and I'll finish with this. If it is true, and I was born and raised in the island, so I've heard every argument. Some of them are more refined over here. We sound a little bit more rational than we do in the island. But The fact is, yeah, believe it or not. But the fact is that arguments such as the one, statements such as the one I'm going to make, are the ones that confuse Puerto Rico and the reasons why this task force needs to speak clearly on what's available. The territorial Commonwealth or enhanced Commonwealth or the Associated Republic will allow Puerto Rico to retain U.S. citizen, as Professor Burnett has said. 90% of the people on the island agree with that. They would swim out of the island if you took the U.S. passport. Let's face it. Let's face it. That's 90% of the people on the island. So I'd like to know from this task force, and I'd like the task force to state whether there is such a thing as a status for Puerto Rico that guarantees U.S. citizenship, that guarantees permanent union with the United States, that allows Puerto Rico and the local legislature to veto federal law at will or in certain circumstances, and allows Puerto Rico at the same time to have some or all sorts of foreign relations with foreign countries. Because if that is true, and that is what's peddled on the island, not by Luis and not by some people who are a little bit more thoughtful about the matter, but it has been peddled in the island during the local straw polls, then I'd like to know that it is available so that New York State can adopt it and secede from the Union. Thanks.
Okay, my name is Jose Luis Rodriguez. I'm the president of HIT, and I'm from New York also, like the previous speaker. And I will encourage also the Commission to bring some clarity to this process. I'm concerned about a particular issue that have not been addressed yet, and that is the fact that more Puerto Ricans are living outside Puerto Rico than in Puerto Rico right now. I have been living in the United States. I also live in New York for over 40 years now, and in any process of self-determination, I would like to participate. And it is not clear yet how this process is going to impact me or is going to impact my children, and how this process is going to unfold and what my participation is going to be, if any. So I believe that the Commission should address that issue and clarify for more than 4.5 million Puerto Ricans that are living in the outside Puerto Rico, where we fit in this process. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gerardo Ramirez. I am an American born in the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. I live here in Maryland. I have 2 copies of my deposition. I would like to submit it to the both co-presidents. Who should I give it to? Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Puerto Ricans have been disenfranchised for 112 years, so I request a little bit of time. Just a little bit of time. Not too long. Now, listening to these 2
We've been
lawyers,
really focusing on looking towards the future and what kind of training we can provide that
Field
will
Road
match
versus
what
Downs,
these other
1901.
departments
Same
are doing in
discussion.
terms of the ability to
Nothing has
attract
changed.
investment, so that we're
Unincorporated
training the
territory.
workforce for the future
2
in areas
different,
like green jobs,
theories
possibility
about where does the
for
authority of
healthcare,
the
allied
Congress
health,
derives
et
from.
cetera.
One says
We
it's derived from
toured along
the,
with everyone
Territorial
and
Clause
received a
and
lot of
Congress,
really
and the other
interesting
one says that
information
it's derived
from
directly
regional municipalities and regions,
by the
excuse me,
Constitution
and
with all
municipalities,
its,
specifically around their
provisions,
interests, because we need to hear from
civil
you
rights.
What you think,
It's the same
where the
discussion
island can
that
go and
started
what kind of
in
investments
1901,
can be
and we're
made and
still
how we
talking.
can
That's why
also
we're
better
here
leverage
for.
our
That's why you're
resources
sitting on,
as we
because they
move
sent
forward.
us,
So
in that
everything
case,
from
to,
infrastructure we
trash
heard, and
can
as
for
well as issues like tourism and
unincorporated
ecotourism. So it's all
territory.
looking forward.
The first time that it was ever
open
made,
it up.
unincorporated territory, Puerto Rico. That means, I don't know if you know that, unincorporated means that it was intended to never become a state. That's written down. That's why you're sitting down here, I'm standing up here. It's a little what. Let's talk about the legal base of that case. I'm going to quote from the case. It says that there are certain principles, natural justice, inherent in Anglo-Saxon character only. Those possessions are inhabited by alien races different from us. I don't know if that's still the same reason, but you should have to work with it. Why are we still unincorporated? Why that case is still in effect? We have to work with that, dear Co-President and Mr. Obama, through you. I am a proud U.S. citizen. I have a DD-214. from the U.S. Navy. I am a proud Hispanic also, and there's no conflict on that. But nobody listens to us. That's what I'm here for. I am not a politician, and I don't want to be a politician. Okay? I just want to make that clear. And Chief Justice Marshall, in that case 1901, said, and I quote, "I am constrained to say that this idea of incorporation has some occult meaning which my mind does not apprehend. It is enveloped in some mystery which I am unable to unravel." You are the judge here. I would like you to try to do the same thing. Try to understand why we are still as unincorporated territory. Like I said, part of the legal basis was racism. Also that in 1901, the territory of Puerto Rico didn't have any Republican system of government. The economy was horrible. But right now, that's not the case. I am a result of the U.S. territory. I have education. I'm here. I know what the Constitution says. We have the due process of law. Everything is applicable. Different from the idea that the powers of the government of the U.S. derives from the territorial clause. No way. Through the years, the Congress has delegated powers to the government of Puerto Rico. That means that it can change, and it has changed through delegation. One day they may say, U.S. Supreme Court might say one thing, next day they say, no, we're going to grant it to you. It has happened thousands of times. So don't tell me that the power of the government derives from the Congress, from the territorial clause, because it's limiting the guarantees of the Constitution. That's not correct. That's why the Chief Justice Marshall opposed.
Thank you. I want to see if we can hear a couple more voices before we finish with this section. But thank you, and thank you for the position. Let me get this gentleman right down here.